What is going on, everyone? Nostalgia925 coming at you with another Digimon comparison video. A video which belongs to a sub-series where we compare certain aspects of the Digimon digital world to certain aspects of another franchise. It can leave some with a sour taste in the mouth, which is why I always take pleasure to write all your thoughts in the comment section and let us spark those debates. As long as you watch your mouth, obviously, and respect all others' opinions, we're all good. For this video we have a very interesting question asked by our loyal Patreon supporter named Marine Solar. Marine, you have been here for a while and I really thank you for it. Making this video for you is the least I could do, even though I was working on another video. I decided to take a break and work on your question first because it was interesting, it really was. Let me read her question. Hello Nostalgia, I don't know if you'll read this message, but I have a video request or idea for you. I saw an article about does the character change when a Pokemon evolves? And I was thinking maybe you could answer that question about Digimon. Digimon evolving differently from Pokemon, I think it is a good question. Because when digivolving, they often become wiser and self-aware of their strength. Maybe you find it interesting enough to make a video about that topic. Not about that article, but just about that question and Digimon. Hope everything is well and wish you the very best. Just for your record, Marine, and everyone, I do read all Patreon comments and haven't forgotten about them. So to all of you who sent messages, please do not worry, I will get to them sooner or later. Now, for Marine's request, what we are going to do is first analyze the article. That way, in the least, we know how evolution affects the Pokemon's mind and we will have a point of reference for Digimon to compare it to. The article is written by Laura Gray, a writer, illustrator and gamer who is currently working as a content writer for ScreenRant. The article starts strong by actually giving somewhat of an answer to the question of whether the personality and mind of a Pokemon changes after evolving. It says that it is possible that after evolving, a Pokemon's personality could be permanently changed, almost as if a Pokemon trainer is suddenly training a different Pokemon altogether post-evolution. Now, with all respect to the article, I thought that it is maybe better that we first fact-check what evolution in Pokemon means. What I learned is that in Pokemon, evolution is more than just a visual change. Those who undergo this metamorphosis can learn different moves, they become more powerful, and sometimes they change abilities and types altogether. Eevee is perhaps the best example as it has many different evolutions with very different types and abilities. Flareon is a prominent fire user, Vaporeon loves water, Jolteon, lightning, and go forth. But these are mostly the external and genetic changes of a Pokemon. What about the mind of a Pokemon who suddenly evolved into a stronger Pokemon with better moves and better abilities? What happens to the personality of a Pokemon once it evolved? Does it remain the same or does it change? Laura Gray wrote very interesting examples of the differences between Pokemon in their pre-evolved form and in their evolved form, hinting that there is plenty of evidence throughout the Pokemon anime to suggest that once a Pokemon evolves, its personality could change forever, with the emphasis on could change. For example, she refers to Pokémon Journeys, the series, with the protagonist Go, one of Ash's traveling companions with a goal it had since it was 6 years old, namely to catch the legendary Pokemon Mew. Now just a side note, I admit to be surprised that a legendary Pokemon can be caught outside of the games. I remember that in the ARCEUS vs CHRONOMON video, I said that CHRONOMON could be caught into a Pokeball despite being, as Pokemon mythology claims, the creator of the universe. I brought that up and some were very ready to counter that argument, which really was interesting. That is how I get to learn more about Pokemon. I happily invite you to that comment section, it really is very interesting. The link towards it is in the description box. Now, back to the example given by Laura Gray. Go caught a Scorbunny, which had a serious but gentle personality and a good sense of humor. Once it evolved into Raboot, it became very different, often lingering in the background of scenes, and it became a bit arrogant and aloof. These already are major differences between the pre-evolution form and the evolved form. Another example was Ash's Charmander, one who had a gentle and kind nature as Ash treated it well, since Charmander originally came from an abusive trainer. Once it evolved into Charmeleon, it became aggressive and standoffish. I remember really enjoying watching Charmeleon. He almost was like this teenager whose hormones completely went loose. There was a very strong difference between Charmander and Charmeleon, although, to be fair, Charmeleon did have a similar personality when it evolved into Charizard. So how should we think of it? Because after all, some show big changes once they evolve, while some show minor changes if at all. Laura Gray did say something very interesting. Well, her whole article was interesting, but anyway, she says that many pre-evolution Pokemon are innocent and carefree, doing their best to please their trainers. As they grow, they shed this innocence in exchange for maturity and better abilities. Now, I do have to say that she has to be a little bit careful with what she says. As she brought the concept maturity into the mix, I take great pleasure to involve Professor Rowan into the mix. He is the resident Pokemon professor of Sandgem Town in the Sinnoh region, and he specializes in Pokemon evolution. He discovered that about 90% of all Pokemon are connected in some way to others through evolution. The professor is very interested in determining if evolution is supposed to be a form of Pokemon reaching quote-unquote maturity, as said Laura Gray, or a way for an incomplete being to become more complete. In fact, here is one of Professor Rowan's quotes. "You may have forgotten it already, but I study the evolution of Pokemon. But the more I study, the more mysteries appear and multiply. Pokemon that evolve and those that don't, what makes them different from each other? Do those that are immature as living beings evolve to once more mature? If so, what do we make of the legendary Pokemon that don't evolve? Are we to assume that the legendary Pokemon are complete as creatures? And especially when it comes to the legendary Pokemon, there are a great many question marks which can be drawn. Many of them are worshipped as gods by particular groups of people, and my assumption would be that when something or someone is being worshipped as gods, then that someone or something must have reached sort of like a higher form of being, let us say the peak of maturity. The question now is whether these legendary Pokemon really are complete beings. There are legendary Pokemon who can evolve and are certainly worthy of being studied. Type Null is one example of a legendary Pokemon who can evolve. Although it might not be a good example as it is a chimeric Pokemon who was created by humans. Cosmog, on the other hand, is a good example of a legendary Pokemon who can evolve. It is a carefree Pokemon with an overly trusting nature who is a bit naive. 2 evolutions further and it either becomes Solgaleo, said to be the beast that devours the sun, or Lunala, said to be the beast that calls the moon. Both are very different than Cosmog, to say the least, even if they are the ones creating Cosmog. So does evolving change a Pokemon's personality? Yes, it does. With some Pokemon a bit less than others, but still the answer would be yes. But what about Digimon? Do their personalities change after digivolving? To which I have to reply with the following: yes they do, and no they do not. So it depends. You see, despite the similarities between Digimon and Pokemon, their worlds have some if not many striking differences to a point that comparison do not always make sense. It will be pretty clear in a moment if Digimon is new to you. Let us first ask the following question: what is Digivolution? Here's the definition. Digivolution is a process used by Digimon, monsters that inhabit a parallel universe called the digital world, that spawned from Earth's telecommunications network. Beware of that last part claiming that Digimon spawned from Earth's telecommunication network. An interview showed that Digimon existed before telecommunication. For more on that, check out the video in the description box. Anyway, through Digivolution, a Digimon can develop into a more powerful being. When a Digimon reaches the next level of evolution, its appearance may resemble its previous form or have no relationship at all, such as Gatomon, who resembles a cat, digivolving to Angel Woman, an Archangel Digimon. Let us take a look at Gatomon and Angel Woman for a moment. When it comes to Gatomon and Angel Woman, just by looking at their appearance, I would say it is safe to assume that their personalities would probably be different. After all, Angel Woman has 8 wings, meaning that it is a being that is quite close to what is considered as the god of the digital world. Gatomon, despite being known as a holy creature, is based on the cat, does not really have a role in the Digimon angelic heaven. Heck, it is not even a member of the Angelmon species. It has a very different skill set in comparison to Angel Woman, making them different Digimon altogether. Let me show you a quote. In the dub, she, meaning GATOMON, speaks in a soft, drawling voice. The Japanese version, however, has GATOMON in a much older voice to reflect her maturity as a champion-level Digimon. As Salamon, she acts more childlike, similar to a typical rookie-level Digimon, while as GATOMON she acts more like a teenager, and as Angel Woman, she acts like an adult. However, in the Japanese version, she behaves maturely even in her child level at times. A very important quote. A quote claiming that there are indeed differences between GATOMON and Angel Woman when it comes to character and personality. There is, however, a problem here. You see, digivolving has always been a very difficult process. Each higher level is more difficult to attain. In fact, a Digimon trying to get to the highest level, meaning Mega, is close to impossible. It takes a lot of time. In Digimon, the standard way to digivolve, and I repeat, the standard way, is by gaining more experience, by fighting and gathering more data, and last but not least, survive long enough to undergo the change. The odds are obviously against every lower ranked Digimon. So at the end of the road, by the time a Digimon will naturally reach the Mega level, it will have changed its personality entirely because, for starters, some Digimon have a free will. Some Digimon can make the difference between good or bad and make choices based on their previous experience. And those personality traits for some Digimon will be crystal clear as some were given the ability to speak. However, some, like let us say Hagurumon and Andromon, are robots. They are programmed so they don't have a personality to begin with. But, and that is why I previously put the emphasis on Digimon reaching the next form via the normal standard way, due to some interferences, Andromon was modified and gained self-awareness when these modifications made it become the Mega level high Andromon. It went from having no personalities to having a personality. On the other hand, some Digimon, like those of the Kabuterimon line, are known to have no intelligence whatsoever. They only act based on primitive instincts. So when it comes to their mind or personality, we are actually not even talking about personality anymore, but rather about general behavior. And here's a quote about Kabuterimon's ultimate form named Mega Kabuterimon. I quote, "With the exception of its survival instincts, its behavior has been observed to consist of protecting the weak, and there are even times when its behavior has appeared knight-like." The quote said that in times, I repeat, in times, its behavior appeared to be knight-like. But to the core, we are still seeing the same general behavior. Every time it digivolves, we can see some little changes to its behavior, but in the end, it still remains one who relies on its instincts. Protecting the weak also became sort of like an instinct for Mega Kabuterimon. So, unless we are talking about Isis Tentomon, Kabuterimon, and Mega Kabuterimon, these Digimon normally have no personalities. When they digivolve, we will see behavior changes, but not personality changes, which are not the same. Now, I'd like to focus on the Digidestined for a moment, because when you follow the logic, none of their partner Digimon really change personalities. Bear with me. We will focus on the Digidestined partner Digimon in Digimon Season 1. What you have to know is that these Digimon are special Digimon who were created as part of a project to help balance the good and evil in the digital world. That alone shows that we are not talking about normal Digimon whatsoever. We are talking about created Digimon with a specific purpose. That is why each were linked to a Digivice and a Digicrest. Both are tools to help a Digimon digivolve. Know that you cannot compare a GATOMON that was created to become the partner of a human to a normal GATOMON that came to be. Now, you see, a Digivice allows a human to make his or her partner Digimon to almost instantaneously digivolve to a higher level by sharing their emotional energy. And after a moment, they will degenerate or de-digivolve to a lower form, or if they are sufficiently injured in battle. Now, the reason why I say you cannot compare a GATOMON created to be linked to a human and a GATOMON that was not created to be linked to a human is because when they digivolve, with the help of a Digivice, they never gained the same experience as those who naturally digivolve. They did not spend a large amount of time fighting day and night for their survival, trying to gather data or simply make choices. No, the partner Digimon only changed thanks to the help of their human partners, momentarily granting them with new powers to face dangers. And as Spider-Man would say, with great power comes great responsibilities. That is what you also see with the partner Digimon once they digivolved. They become more responsible because they have more powers, but also because they have their human partners to keep them in check and advise them. After they confronted the obstacle, the Digimon reverts back to a lower rank. So at the core, these partner Digimon, despite digivolving to a stronger form, they are, from what I can tell, still the same. Only a little bit more responsible because usually they are being digivolved to confront a danger. On top of that, because the Digivice is mostly being used for a particular challenge, it is hard to tell what personality those digivolved partner Digimon really have because they are mostly being used quote-unquote for heated moments. Most of the time they spend their days being rookies, being children, with the exception of GATOMON, who has been through a lot, like being abused by Myotismon, and that is also why GATOMON in character is entirely different than the rest of the group, as it naturally digivolved into this form. And that is why it is said that in the Japanese dub, GATOMON behave more mature even in its child form. So to conclude, do Pokemon change personalities after evolving? Yes, although changes can be big or little depending on the Pokemon. Do Digimon change personalities after evolving? Yes and no. And it depends on numerous factors like the history of the Digimon, the circumstances making it digivolve, whether the Digimon is the partner Digimon or not, and many more other factors. And know that some Digimon, when they digivolve, have no changes in personality. Some Digimon have no personalities and end up gaining one, and some have personalities and end up losing them. So it is very random and very complex when it comes to Digimon. Hi guys, this is the end of the video. Marine, again a big thank you for your contribution and presence so far, and a big thank you for being a loyal Patreon supporter. You have helped me a lot, trust me when I say it. It will be pretty clear how you've helped me once I'll make a video about it. But making this video for you is the least I can do. I hope the rest of you also enjoyed it. Feel free to write in the comment section how you think about Pokemon or Digimon's personalities once they evolve or digivolve. Let loose of your ideas. And you know, we are only talking theoretically, so I can assume that not everyone will agree with one another, which is all the more interesting. Just write your opinions down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, drop a like and a comment. All of my other social media platforms are placed in the description box, feel free to take a look, and also feel free to support me on Patreon. And speaking of, I thank all present Patreon members. Really a big thank you for your contribution and your presence. Never hesitate to write a request or something. For the newcomers, know that all my videos are placed in particular playlists which are always updated, that way you can catch up on newer and older videos.